Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope, real inspiration. For real. We're at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis. My guest today is Allie Kaplan. She's editor-in-chief of Twin Cities Business Magazine, host of the By All Means podcast that TCB put out, and also longtime host of Shop Girls on My Talk 107.1. She is her own little media conglomerate, and I'm so excited, Allie, to talk with you today.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
So you really have a unique story because you started as more of a news print reporter, and that led you into magazine, that led you into fashion reporting, fashion industry reporting. Give people a visual on how that trajectory worked for you.
Sure. So going back even further, I grew up in a real retail-oriented family. My parents actually met working at Dayton's. So it was kind of in the culture, in the family. Dayton's was my first job in high school. But I always knew I liked retail, but I always knew I didn't want to go into retail. I loved writing. I loved writing from the time I was a kid. Figured out in high school that I could ask questions for a living working on a newspaper. And so that was really my plan. Went to journalism school, and I was very focused on newspapers. That was what I was going to do. As I worked my way up at a newspaper in Chicago, the Daily Herald newspaper, I had an opportunity to work in a position on the Metro desk that was sort of business, but with a consumer slant to it, looking at how we spend our time and how we spend our money. And that was a real aha for me, and I really loved telling those stories. It was off the news, but it was looking at the psychology of being a consumer. And so that led me down the road of, wow, I can kind of look at retail and write about retail, but be a journalist. And from there, got into fashion and column writing and everything else.
And isn't it interesting how one job and one detail of a job actually could change a life path?
100%. Yes, absolutely.
And so you made the decision then the job presented itself to come to the Twin Cities eventually, working at MSP.
Yeah, well, no, actually, I came back to work for the St. Paul Pioneer
That's
Press.
Right, St. Paul Pioneer Press. So you were still in journalism as a print reporter.
The Chicago Tribune didn't want me, and I said, whatevs. And so I started looking around, and there was an opportunity on the features staff to go, which was not, as you know, in journalism, you generally have to work your way to a feature staff. Those are coveted positions. And this was at the time, shortly after Jackie Banaszewski had left, and they were winning Pulitzer Prizes, and the Pioneer Press was an underdog, but they were
competitive.
Yeah. And so it was a great opportunity to work with some real icons. And so I moved back to the Twin Cities to work for the Pioneer Press, and I started a column there, and I was writing both, the fashion feature side, but also getting into business and retail and shopping as well.
And I want to take a moment to talk about how you really were developing your brand, your blog, pre-Instagram.
Yes.
I mean, you have a great following.
I'm very old, Roshini,
on Instagram.
as you know. Mm-hmm.
But what I love about following you, I mean, you are such a great writer. I've loved that about you ever since I discovered you in the magazines, even before we met. And even in your Instagram posts, they're so creative and you have interesting turns of phrases. So that's just a testament, because not everyone who ends up, you hope, editor-in-chief of a business magazine is also this really good creative writer.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. It's all writing. I mean, to me, it's all media. And that's why I like social media. I mean, not just for the likes and the followers, but to me, it's become a new way of communicating. It's a new channel. And so I can't imagine being a journalist and not being those places, just to think about and study how we are communicating today.
You've also brought your sons into that world. You're married. You have 2 sons. They're adorable.
Yeah.
And it seems that they, at a young age, are learning the tools and using them in a creative way.
Well, yes. I mean, what my older one early decided that he wanted to start something, and so he started a blog. He's now become kind of a disaffected, very cliche teenager, and so he started a blog called That Is Great, and I helped. I was willing to help and support. I said from the start, I'm not going to be the one pushing. I don't need another thing to nag you about. I'm not going to remind you to do this. It's up to you. And so he did it for a while. It was great. He's a little bit on hiatus right now, being a 15-year-old.
I love it.
And being
15-year-old on hiatus from his blog.
Yes.
I love that.
But it's a great experience. It's a great way to, when I was that age, you had to go get a job or get an internship. Now anybody can have their own channel immediately.
So some of your publications or your writings have ended up in Lucky, in Delta Sky Magazine, Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, which you were on staff for quite a while, many places. How do you balance when there's not such good news, especially now as editor-in-chief of Twin Cities Business Magazine? I mean, not everything is coming up roses for businesses. So sometimes your team needs to investigate, often ask really tough questions. But you also have to, you're in the business community trying to develop those relationships.
Sure. I mean, I think it all comes down to your integrity and having a reputation for being truthful and for really going deep and asking the questions so that when something is unpleasant, you can talk to your sources and say, look, this is our job. And they understand that and they appreciate that. You have to balance it out. If you're only telling good news, no one's going to believe you.
Right. I mean, you're not writing a fancy piece for them. You were maybe writing about them or getting their expertise.
Nothing makes me cringe more than when a publicist calls and says, we wanted to ask you about that ad that you wrote. No. I do not read. It's not an ad. It is not an ad. That's very important to understand.
So what is something that would really surprise some of the people you write about if they learned blank about Allie Kaplan?
Oh, my goodness. I feel like an open book. I don't know.
No secrets?
Really not many. I'm so boring. I mean, I'm sort of a weird, extroverted introvert. I mean, I'm kind of happy to go home and just veg out on the couch. And, it's like when you have to be on, you're on. But I don't have the need to be. People think that I'm out constantly. And I am out a lot. But there you get very adept at dipping in and dipping out. And by the time the picture's posted, I'm home in sweatpants.
Love it. Well, and you have a fun, gorgeous husband to go home to.
Oh,
I always ask our married featured people, how do you keep it sexy with the husband after all these years,
Wow.
Allie?
Here I was trying to prep on business headlines and you want to talk about sexy husbands. That's fantastic. He is not even on Instagram. He could care less about any of that. He's a professor. We have busy lives. We support each other. We balance each other, I think, to an extent. And you have to make time for us, we have to go out because when you're home, there's a tendency to you start working, you start doing different things. There are many nights where, sexy is the two of us on the couch with our laptops. That's what it's really like, right? So you just have to make time for each other.
And what is your favorite way of going out? What's a great date night scripted by Allie?
Probably Mexican food. Lots of, chips and salsa and margaritas, with friends. Again, I like to go to movies. It's pretty boring. But going out, we have so many amazing restaurants. I love to be in a cool environment and try new places.
You have interviewed so many people and been in a lot of openings and really looked into a lot of different kinds of businesses and trends. Mm-hmm. Do you have one, interview or story that just even for you was shocking or took your breath away? Maybe it was for a good reason.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
It's hard to have favorites when, there's so many cool people you've interviewed that I'm not going to make you pin it down to this is the best interview ever. But maybe just something that surprised you or made you look at life a little differently.
Oh my goodness, this is terrible. You're going to have to edit this way down as I try to think of something.
We'll let you ponder that.
Okay.
Meantime, we are in Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis, a place that knows good food, good drinks. If Allie Kaplan were a cocktail or a drink, what would she be?
This one I anticipated. I've been listening to you, Roshini. And I know it's been said before, but it really is true. I'm a margarita girl. I like it. It's a little bit spicy. It's got a kick, but it's also sweet.
It's a good drink.
Yes.
And it's a happy drink.
It's a happy drink, right? If I'm going to drink. And my colleagues and friends would laugh because I'm a total lightweight. I go out with, Stephanie March, food and dining editor, and she's like, okay, she'll have the fruity, punchy thing. I am not a huge drinker, but yes, if I do drink, it's a margarita.
And those things can knock you out. You have to really pace yourself with margaritas.
Depending on where you are ordering it.
Yeah.
Yes. As far as stories, I guess I'm always fascinated by what resonates with people, and I think that's another reason why I love social media, putting something out and seeing, something hit right away and other things just sit there and you're like, what is that? I'm fascinated by how nostalgic people are, Minnesotans, I think people in general. It's one of the things that I love about retail to this day. I mean, I will always be a retail reporter at heart. And, posting a picture and a little story, as we did a couple of weeks ago, about the Dayton's sign going back up on the building for the Dayton's project. I knew that was going to be a moment. That's why I made sure to be there and get that photo.
And that photo you posted was amazing.
But wow. I mean, it was fascinating to me. And I'm thinking, retailers should be looking at that and thinking, like, how do you harness that kind of, passion and nostalgia and longing that people
for the
have?
brand.
Right.
That some brands would pay millions and millions for. And for you personally, I mean, your parents met at Dayton's.
Right.
I mean, what a full circle moment.
But just that still has that much resonance in this community, and that people, want those touch points in those places. I love stories about things like that.
On that note of retail, lots of retail having issues with the storefront. And, Amazon's taking over the world. Target and Best Buy are really trying to re-engage on different platforms. I don't think the store is dead, but what are some of your predictions for how we shop?
I think, Minnesota, look, we are the birthplace of the covered shopping mall with Southdale. We are the home to the largest Mall of America. This is really a great market for looking at the future and looking at, what is happening. I think what you see right now happening with the regional malls is super fascinating, how they have to find their new personality. They have to become, lifestyle destinations, kind of the new form of the town center. Southdale is going to have Lifetime Fitness. They're going to have Lifetime Work, the co-working space. You've got the mall perimeter becoming the new center court. So it is destination on steroids. We've just got to give people bigger wows and reasons to go to a place. Rosedale just announced that they're going to do apartments and a grocery store and all these things. I think the mall becomes a destination for new reasons.
Well, I'm all about the wow.
Yeah.
What are some brands that really wow it for you?
Well, I mean, locally, obviously, anybody coming to this town, the first place I send them is Martin Patrick 3. I mean, it's just on another level. And I think nationally, everybody is aware because when you talk about creating a unique, inviting experience, a place where you're just there for the exploration, nobody is doing it better.
It is amazing. And I've taken clients there. I've taken a couple of my male executive coaching clients there, and I will, work call ahead with Jeffrey, and he will get their sizes and get the room set up, and it's a wonderful experience to go there and also watch my male clients in this case really feel catered to and like they're special, and they really take seriously how you go about incorporating the different looks into your brand. And I mean, even high-level executives still sometimes need to be reminded of that. And I'm so glad you brought up Martin Patrick 3 because it is absolutely a store that I wish I could send everyone to. I wish they could all afford it. But definitely my male executives, that's the top spot I send them.
Yeah. But then on the complete flip side, have you been to the new cactus store?
No.
In town? It was called Madre Cacti. They changed their name to Mother Cacti. They had some branding issues. But it's this little place in Northeast that sells only cacti. That is what they sell from around the world. And it's an Instagrammer's dream. It's beautiful. It's a warehouse, and they've just got these amazing plants. But you walk in and you're like, first of all, this is Minnesota, and they're going to be open in February when it's like, negative 20, and they're just selling cacti. What is that about? But talk about really specializing and going deep. And the founder travels the world, bringing back exotic plants. He's got this experience, but then at the same time, he's becoming a destination for companies all over are going to him because of his expertise and ordering, and he's wholesaling, and so. The store is part of it, but you have to have this omni-channel experience.
Allie, I believe there are no coincidences. I am so glad you told me about the store, because my husband and I have kind of a symbol for us as the cactus.
Really?
Yes.
Well, then you've got to go.
We say it's not cacti, it's cactus.
Ah, I love it.
I will take him there as a date night.
You should.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I will tell them. Allie Kaplan sent me. In this world, we are dealing with a lot of issues, okay? So in business, some say it's the decade of the woman. And I say women have always had the capacity to do anything they want. Do you feel now more of them are fully understanding that and will maximize and really come out and own their wow?
100%, yes.
What's different about now,
though? That's a great question. I just was writing. We have a cover that I'm really proud of, the October cover of Twin Cities Business with Amanda Brinkman on it, and she's like giving a big, she's got so much energy, and I feel like putting her on the cover a few years ago, she might have been asked to just, kind of give a very, serious smile. And we're like, go for it. Bring the energy, bring your personality, be who you are. You look at the newsstand this month, and it's kind of amazing. I don't ever remember a month where every national business magazine right now has a woman on the cover. And the cover of Inc. magazine has a pregnant woman on the cover. I don't think it's ever happened. It's Audrey Gelman, who is the founder of The Wing, one of the co-working, such a big trend. Founder of one of those co-working spaces, but a pregnant woman on the cover. It stopped me in my tracks. A pregnant woman on the cover of a business magazine is not something that you see, but why shouldn't we see that?
Exactly.
She is, living a full life. She is not stopping. Having children isn't a handicap. It isn't this or that. It's how do you make it all work together? And I think we're just getting a little more real. I think men and women, everybody, is just embracing their whole self a little more and not feeling like we have to be this one formal person at the office and, this other person who doesn't talk about their hobbies and their lifestyle, on the side. It's kind of everything.
I like that, the whole person. And that is good for women. It's good for men.
Exactly.
It's good for families. It's good for kids to see both of their parents or all of their parents or one of their parents doing this.
Right. And it's a little tricky, to reconcile because, we put on a lot of events, and we do our biggest event of the year for Twin Cities Business is Women in Leadership. We had like 800 people attend, and you look around the room and it's amazing, powerhouse women and men come as well. You're like, why is everybody showing up for this event? Well, we had Beth Ford for Land O'Lakes last year, and we usually get some big names, but I think it's really interesting that companies want to be associated with that. They want to have those conversations about getting more women into the C-suite. I wish we could get to a point where we didn't have to have a women in leadership lunch. But that is my
point too, and I talk about this with various leaders on this podcast. I wish it could just be leaders. You're not a woman leader. You're the editor-in-chief of Twin Cities Business Magazine. I don't care what your gender is. That's a big job.
Yeah.
And you are walking indoors because of that title. And I really hope in our lifetimes, Allie, that it won't matter what gender.
So I think we're getting there. We are trying to do subtle things. So we had an event just a few weeks ago we do these TCB talks, and we called it Redefining Leadership. It was a new event. We had 3 women as panelists. We didn't call it a women's event, but we did intentionally pick them. And they were women who are in unexpected careers, construction, biotech, things that are not heavily, female dominated. And they're in careers that they didn't expect to be in. They've all made interesting pivots. And so that was the connecting tissue, but they were all women. And so, but we didn't focus on the female part. We focused on their interesting stories of leadership. And I love that. And I love that we're creating a new franchise where it doesn't always have to be women on the panel, but it's an opportunity to. I think it's just how you pick and looking beyond your comfort zone. And I mean, that goes for diversity. It goes for all kinds of issues, not just gender.
I often say that I dream of a world like Star Trek, where it doesn't matter how many eyes you have, what color you have, if you have ears or not, you are taken by what you do, your merit.
Right.
And that's what you're judged on.
100%.
No matter who you are, a person's mother really matters. And you've had the opportunity to broadcast with your mother.
Oh, yes.
On Shop Girls for My Talk 107.1. And I listened to you. I mean, it is a fun experience to be driving around listening to. What is that like?
Oh, my mother. Yes.
Do you have to kind of manage her, or is she?
Oh, no.
Can't
she
manage
manages
her.
me.
Okay.
There is no managing Harmony. I think what some people don't know is that my mom actually had a career in broadcasting and events. She didn't just, suddenly land
Which
on
makes
the,
it so much better on
Yes. She was in special events for Dayton's. She did a radio show back in the day in the 12th floor auditorium. There was a weekly show where they did top 10 songs and top 10 fashions on the radio. And she hosted that. So, she would fill in the early days of Shop Girls. She would fill in whenever my, partner wasn't there, and everybody loved my mom. And so she became, and I think people like hearing the dynamic of, you can say things to your mother will say things to you, and you can say things to her that it's a unique relationship.
Oh,
and
it's very unique.
And people relate to that, and they just love her because she's, funny, and she's super in the know. I mean, she is more up on pop culture than I am, without a doubt. We were doing a live show once, and there was a woman watching. It's always weird when people watch you do radio. You've probably had that experience too, but they watch. And there was a woman who, after the show, she came up to us. She's just kind of staring at us, looking at us quizzically, and she looked at us. She's like, "Are you really mother and daughter?" And I was like, "Are you kidding? Do you think we could make this up?" No, we just play one on the radio. No, it is very much real, and it is very she is as bossy as she sounds.
Well, what's funny, it reminds me of my mother and some of the dynamics, because, as you know, I'm a communication strategist and work with executives and, helping people with their own communication strategy. And so when people say, "Well, who's your most difficult client?" or this or that, I said, "Well, I don't necessarily have difficult clients, but I do have a mother who could never be my client because she would never take my advice."
Yes.
And it's just, it's who knows what's going to come out of her mouth. So she's a party in a box, and we're blessed to have her. And I'm sure you feel the same way about your mom.
I do. It's a wonderful opportunity, and something I will treasure that we get to do this together.
What do you want your sons to take from the fact that you and your husband you balance each other out, you are supportive of each other, but how do you want to see them go out into the world as men?
Oh, my goodness. It is interesting being a mom of boys, only boys. I do feel a responsibility to teach them how to be just good humans and to look at everybody as equal. And I think they do that. I think, my sons came when I was moving into my TCB office. They came to help me sort out old issues, and they were laying them out on the floor and getting them in order. And my older one was like, "God, there are a lot of white men on the cover of this magazine." And I hadn't said anything, but you look back, a decade, and indeed it was a lot of white dudes from the corner office of big companies. So the fact that he is already seeing that and seeing the world in a more holistic way, that makes me proud.
And nothing wrong with white men.
No, of course not.
But it's the balance.
It's the balance.
And it's the mixture.
Right.
And that it all reflects society.
Right. Exactly.
Well, Allie Kaplan, so much fun to have you on. I know we could go on forever. Thanks for joining us on Real Leaders with Roshini.
So much fun, Roshini. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep it real.